Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the back doors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Welcome to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. As always, at the end of the show, please feel free to drop us a 5-star review if you dig what we're doing, and some kind words, even some not kind words, so we know what we need to fix. Because, honey, we know that we are not perfect. So, we are going to continue on with our Vampire the Masquerade V5 character creations. This week, we are going to do a Brujah, which I think is a great clan for you to play if it's the very first time that you have ever played Vampire. If you're going to equate it again to D&D, it would be the same as playing a ranger or a rogue for the very first time when you sit down to play at the table. They're not super complicated, and they are an easy to understand clan with easy to understand motives. So who will be our inspiration for our Brujah today? I thought that we would go for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Here's why. We do know that he has his wrestler past. We do know that he is very intelligent, very smart guy, very charismatic. We do know that he is a super nice guy. We're going to kind of not so much ignore that part, but we're not really going to highlight that part of Dwayne Johnson for our Brujah character. What we are going to highlight is his strength, his athleticism, and we're going to really kind of play up his action roles that he has played in movies, as well as his wrestling and even football career, really. So the Brujah, who are they? They are the learned clan, the rabble, the punks, the hipsters, the rebels, the philosopher kings, and the hellions. The dream of the learned clan is a world where all injustice has been eliminated and the living and the undead can coexist in peace. They say it's for the love of mortals that they lead them against their masters. In truth, they may simply rage against a distant or non-existent god that they can never fight, against a curse they can never end. Theirs is a dream that poisons everything it touches. As they infiltrate or instigate revolutions, their hunger and passion ensure that blood will flow, innocents die, and peace will never be attained. Now, again, I know, it's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Who wants to think of him as a bad guy? But we are talking Vampire the Masquerade. We have come to terms with the fact that in Vampire the Masquerade, there really are no heroes here. So we're going to pull up our character sheet. We're going to keep the name. We're going to call this Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne Johnson, perfect. And we know that he is going to be a Brujah. We're not going to worry about sire and stuff yet. We are going to get to that as we go through the clan. The first thing, though, that we are going to do is have a look at the archetypes, as we always do. So the Brujah archetypes, and remember, we are keeping Dwayne Johnson in mind as we look at these. So Brujah archetypes. Cancer in the system. This kindred exists as a cog in a corrupt system. They may be a night worker for a mortal corporation known to be treating its employees like dirt, a staffer in a broken political party, or one of the remaining Brujah in the Camarilla. Interesting. They work to bring the system down from within, maybe hoping to replace it with something better, but often having the process of rebuilding the last of their priorities. Now, if we were talking The Rock specifically with his wrestling history, I think that we could possibly force that archetype onto this character and make it work. But let's see what else we can do here. Another archetype is voice of the people. The Brujah have always strived for progress in kindred society. Many of them were progressives in life and follow the same path in undeath. The voice of the people might be a former feminist activist, eco-writer, or an anti-capitalist protester who channels their passion into speaking out against the Ventru or Toreador, or fomenting political unrest among mortals. Their ambitions may come back to hurt the clan, but sometimes they form the core of a revolutionary movement. I don't think that's applicable here. Blood worshipper. The Brujah were once considered a high clan, superior to most, and respected by all. Some Brujah still believe their blood is stronger than that of other clans, and they have a right to apply their doctrine on others. Brujah who uphold this form of blood idolatry often come from fundamentalist backgrounds, right-wing groups, and the academic elite. Monster in disguise. The Brujah claim there is no clan closer bonded to humanity than their own, which is why they exhibit such fiery passions. But some take it further than that and strive to live like mortals, but keeping up to date with modern culture, forming relationships and building families. The payoff for this behavior is a startling duality of the dream and reality. The beast will not be denied for long, and undead family men and working women must slip away from their fake lives every so often to avoid seeing red, returning only after they have sated their dangerous urges. I think that's the one we're going to go with. And perhaps there is a undercurrent here, monster in disguise, where everything is nice on the surface, but in reality, there's something much darker lurking beneath the surface. So now we need to turn to our disciplines. What do we have for disciplines for the Brujah? Celerity is one. Brujah use celerity to strike fast and escape uprisings that they have started. They hunt with it to snatch vessels from the streets, feeding from them savagely, only to rapidly dispose of a mortal before vanishing into the night. Not applicable to our Dwayne Johnson. So we're going to go with potence. Brujah use potence as a devastating weapon, cutting short any confrontation with destructive finality. Though the clan preaches connection to humanity, its members often take what they want by force, and it's simpler to hold a kine in place or crack their skull open and drink its insides than to negotiate for a mouthful of blood. Okay, I mean, that's pretty gruesome, but again, it's vampire. There are no heroes here. And presence. Brujah use presence to win the hearts of the crowd, turn a threatening mob against itself, or send a dangerous opponent fleeing into the night. Brujah intellectuals prefer feeding with presence to convince vessels to give up their blood voluntarily. Other clan members may use presence to terrify their prey, as it apparently adds an exquisite bold taste and fuels less subtle powers of their curse. Okay. So what we're going to do is with presence, it's 2 and 1 for these two disciplines, right? And I think that we're going to go with the higher in presence than potence. I think that makes sense for our Dwayne the Rock character. So presence 2, we're going to mark that on our sheet, and potence 1. Okay. So the bane of the clan is the blood of the Brujah simmers with barely contained rage, exploding at the slightest provocation. Subtract dice to equal to the bane severity of the Brujah from any roll they resist. Fury, frenzy. This cannot take the pool below 1 die. Okay. So basically, it's a unkept rage is how we're going to summarize that. But we're going to add page 67 underneath the Clan Bane section of our sheet, just to make sure that we have something that we can reference fairly quickly. So let's go up to our disciplines and see what we have. Okay, Potence 1 is going to give us Potence 1, Lethal Body. Using this power, the user is capable of causing horrendous damage to mortals, tearing skin and breaking bones with bare fingers. I'm just going to double check that I'm looking at the right page because, wow. Level 1 also gives us Soaring Leap. Possessing unholy strength is more than arms and fists. The user can leap far higher and further than any mortal. Okay, cool. Easy enough. Pretty straightforward. For presence. For presence, level 2, we're going to break into that next on the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse Ross. So we were just working out some of our clan disciplines, and we have level 2 presence that we are talking about. So we have level 1 for presence gives us awe. Anyone in the presence of the vampire finds their attention inexplicably drawn to them. Those listening to the vampire speak might suddenly agree on subjects where they once held different viewpoints. While this power doesn't cause rapt infatuation, it is still strong enough to sway the minds of most mortals. You also get daunt. Instead of attracting people, the vampire uses presence to repel. With this power, the user appears threatening and exudes an aura of menace powerful enough to make most mortals avoid their attention, and even vampires think twice about acting against them. And for level 2 in presence, we're going to take Lingering Kiss, which is the only one offered at level 2. What we get is the kiss of the vampire exudes near ecstasy in the victim, but this power leaves other kisses in the dust. Victims feed upon the user, becoming addicted to the kiss, obsessing over it, and even seeking the vampire out for repeated feedings. Most mortals often become anemic, self-harm, or even die from this addiction, but vampires find it a useful power for cultivating a herd and empowering their favorite associates. Addicting other vampires is also possible, with the caveat that obsessed vampires demanding to be fed from quickly lead to the user becoming bloodbound. So the next thing we need to figure out is what predator type we're going to go with. And I think I've got the one already, and we may have used it in our Paul Rudd build. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but it is Osiris is the one that we're going to look at for that, and you can find it on page 177. So, Osiris, you are a celebrity among mortals. Yes, it might be a little bit too on the nose, but we're doing it. We're going with it. Or else you can run a cult, a church, or something similar. You feed from your fans or worshippers who treat you as a deity. You always have access to easy blood, but followers breed problems with the authorities, organized religions, and indeed the Camarilla. In life, you might have been a DJ, a writer, a cultist, a preacher, or a LARP organizer, or a former wrestler, or a former football player, or an actor. I added that last bit. We get to add a specialty of occult or performance. We are going to go with occult on that one, just because I think we're already going to take a large amount of performance for the rock character in just a little bit. So I think we'll add a little bit of occult for some diversity. We get another dot in presence, so we need to go back and update our presence because we'll have another level in that. We spend 3 dots between the fame and herd backgrounds and spend 2 dots between the enemies and mythic flaws. Okay, no problem. Here's how we're going to work all of this out. The first thing we're going to do is go back and pick up another level of presence. All right, so we had up to level 2, which was Lingering Kiss. Now we are going to add Dead Gaze. Briefly exposing their vampire nature, the user instills a single subject with utter terror. Mortals often cower, run, or freeze with fear, while other vampires submit like whipped dogs or flee in frenzied fear. Okay, cool. I like that. And we also get entrancement. The vampire focuses their unnatural allure on a single person, instilling them in a rapt fascination or infatuation, akin to falling head over heels or meeting one's lifelong idol. The person affected does their best to remain in the vampire's good graces, but stops short of causing themselves or their loved ones physical harm. Okay. So we're going to add those two things to our sheet. Also on our sheet, we need to add that dot to the occult, which I think is just going to add a little bit of diversity to this character. And we are going to split the 3 dots that we have to split between fame and herd. We're going to go 1 fame and 2 herd. We need to split 2 between enemy and mythic flaw. So that's obviously going to be 1 dot in each of those merits and flaws, which we'll get way more into in just a little bit. So next, I think we should do our attributes. Then we'll take a break and come back with our skill breakdown, because that usually takes up a pretty good amount of time. So let's have a look at our attribute spreads. I think I already know how I want to have the rock breakdown. Okay. For our attributes, we take 1 at 4, 3 at 3, 4 at 2, and 1 at 1. So which one are we going to give? Okay. We're going to go 4 in charisma, because it's the rock. We're going to go 3 in strength. We're going to go 3 in stamina. And we're going to go 3 intelligence. How many in 3? 3 attributes at 3. Okay, and then 4 at 2. So we're going to go 2 in composure. Because they're Bruja, so they do have a shorter fuse, right? We're going to go 2 in wits. How many is 2? I think it's 4. 4 attributes at 2. We're going to go 2 manipulation, 2 dexterity, and we're going to go 1 resolve. Fantastic. That looks good. Which also gives us our health, which is stamina plus 3. So our stamina is 3, so we have 6 health for the rock. So we color in 6 little dots. And our willpower, I think, is going to be quite low. It's composure plus resolve. Yeah, our willpower is only 3. But again, Bruja, short fuse. So it makes sense, I think. Okay, so we've taken care of that. When we come back from the break, we are going to get into our skills for our Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson Vampire the Masquerade character build. We'll be right back on the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast.
I want to talk to you guys about this amazing product I've been using lately called Hydrant. If you're like me and you want to kick the coffee habit, but you're worried about your energy levels depleting, to avoid the morning sluggishness and that midday slump, you need to make sure you're hydrated. It's super important. And that's where I've been using Hydrant. And for 25% off your first order, you can go to drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC at checkout. Hydrant is basically flavored electrolyte packets you mix directly into your water to make hydrating your body easy and delicious. And what I love about Hydrant, it's backed by research. The formula was developed by Oxford scientists to provide perfectly balanced, efficient hydration. Again, that's drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC for 25% off your first order. Another really cool thing about Hydrant, there's no synthetic colors or artificial sweeteners. The formula is vegan and you can choose between 3 different flavors or a variety pack. So for all my vegan friendly fellows out there, this one's for you. Again, this is drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. This week, continuing in our exploration of character builds for Vampire the Masquerade V5. This time around, it's a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson build. We haven't figured out the sire yet, or the generation. We're going to do that in a little bit. I have a bit of an idea about generation and sire, but I'm still kind of letting that percolate there in the background. So let's look at our skills for our Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson character inspiration. Again, they do have these ways that you can have a bit of a skill distribution. So we've got Jack of all trades, we've got balanced, and we've got specialist. And I think that we're going to go Jack of all trades with this, with The Rock, because let's face it, homeboy is into a lot of stuff, right? He's in movies, he's got wrestling, he's does a lot of charity work and things like that. So I just feel like it makes sense for him to be able to do a lot of stuff as a character in Vampire the Masquerade as well. So making him as diverse as possible for this character in particular, I think is going to be important. So let's go Jack of all trades. So we need to have 1 skill at 3 and then 8 at 2. The 1 skill at 3, I'm going to put down as athletics because it is The Rock that we're talking about. Now, we're going to add 2 for brawl. We're also going to go melee. I think that we should go streetwise at 2. Intimidation at 2. We're going to give him some leadership as well. Leadership. We're going to go performance. So we need 8 at 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need 2 more. Let's give him some etiquette. Let's make him, and let's go awareness at 2. Okay, so that's 8 at 2. And 10 skills at 1, which is pretty much everything else on the sheet. So we're going to skip craft because I don't know that he needs to be crafty. But we're going to go drive. We're going to go firearms, larceny, stealth. We're going to go persuasion, subterfuge. We're going to give him some politics. We're going to give him an investigation, a medicine, finance, so he knows how to take care of his stuff. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1 more. Let's give him academics because he ain't no dummy. And we have the 1 dot in occult from our predator type that we chose earlier, which was Osiris. Okay. There, that's our skill layout for The Rock. Again, not a specialist, but definitely a diverse character, which I think is perfect for a Brujah character. I think that the Brujah, because of the story, and you can look into the lore of the Brujah, but they were formerly a very highly touted clan in the Camarilla, and then something happened, which you can learn about in the Vampire the Masquerade lore. And they're now kind of looked down on, even frowned upon, which I don't think is really fair. So, yeah, I think that having a Brujah who is diverse, who is charismatic, who is strong, who is a good leader, and who is very diverse in the things that he knows and is capable of doing is going to be incredibly handy as part of a Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle. So I think that's kind of perfect there. Okay, next. We usually do our advantages here, but I think we're going to skip ahead to our convictions and touchstones, and then we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back from the break, we will get into our touchstones, our advantages, because I think that there's going to be a lot to talk about here for that one. And then we're going to have to get into our look at how the Rock will actually work as a vampire, and we'll have to sort out the sire and then figure out his generation and all of that stuff as well. So let's get into our convictions on page 172. Now, for the Paul Rudd build, I took the easy way out and I gave him the humanist breakdown. They're kind of the chronicle tenets, but I gave that the score for the convictions. I just thought that it made the most sense for a Paul Rudd kind of character. But let's look at what we think the Rock's convictions and beliefs are going to be. And then we have to do the same amount of touchstones. So, we have thou shalt not kill, okay? Kill only the unworthy unbelievers in fair combat or in self-defense, okay? Never expose children to violence. You know what? Let's put that... Oh, no, because we have the wrestling background. Torn. See? This is why I told you. It was going to take a minute to sort this out. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Disobedience is dishonor. Protect the innocent from harm. Courage is the highest virtue. Always keep your sworn word. Yes. Yes, we're going to use that one for our rock-inspired character. Always keep your sworn word. So we're going to put that in touchstones. Always. Whoops. He seems like a guy who would be true to his word, doesn't he? Keep his word. We are going to go with, what else? The truth is sacred, thou shalt not lie. Slavery is evil, obey authority, my country, right or wrong. None may control me, never do drugs or drink alcohol. Thou shalt not torture. The guilty must be punished, from each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs. Rob from the rich, give to the poor. Reject wealth, for it corrupts. Never act against another, insert own group, faith, or sect. Okay, so never act against another Brujah, maybe? No, I feel like it may be in the Brujah nature to be a little scrappy. So we're not going to do that. Always aid a woman in need. Stand up for the disenfranchised. Respect a religion. Let's go stand up for the disenfranchised. Let's give him 2 convictions here. Stand up for the disenfranchised. Because I feel like as a Brujah being kicked out of the Camarilla and all of that stuff with the Brujah history, he may be a little sensitive to that. So now we've got our convictions. We need to pick 2 touchstones that are going to complement those. So let's see. We have always keep your sworn word. Some touchstones. Human looks exactly like someone you admired, human relative, someone you have come to recognize, someone who represents something, someone who guards, symbolizes, or protects the thing you value, like a doorman. I know we picked that for a human related to someone you killed very early in your unlife, someone you swore you didn't have to kill because you aren't a monster. Not really. I think that would be an interesting layer to this character. A human related to someone you killed very early in your unlife is someone that they kind of protect. A touchstone must be a living human being connected to humanity through the inhuman is at the very least going the long way around. So he's going to feel protective, I think, to a human who is related to someone, maybe a brother or a sister, could even be a son or a daughter of someone that may have been accidentally killed while he was a young vampire. I feel like he may be a little haunted by that, so I think it kind of works. Remember, good intentions are still only good intentions, and in Vampire the Masquerade, There are no heroes here, so I feel like once the beast gets a hold of our character, it may be something that they aren't super able to control. So that's our touchstones and convictions. Our chronicle tenets, again, that's something that you decide at your table. It's part of your session 0 with your storyteller and the other people that you're going to be playing vampire with. And that is something that it's kind of like the baseline for the story. And you can actually explain that along the time that you also you decide how you're going to deal with conflict, or if the storyteller goes to a place or another player at the table goes to a place that somebody is uncomfortable with. Deciding how you're going to deal with that at the table, I think, is a good time to actually talk about your chronicle tenets, because I think that all of those things are all going to kind of work together, and it's really going to mold the attitude and the atmosphere at your table. So I think that is really important to talk about, whether it's the X cards or if you are just going to do the Google Sheet that I shared on the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast Twitter feed. You can grab that and you can add to it. You can take stuff out of it. It was really just a baseline that I had created for my girls around my D&D table. So you can take that and adapt it for vampire, adapt it for your table. I just thought it was something that may come in handy for you. When we come back from the break, we are going to jump into our backgrounds, merits, and flaws, and we will also break into our sire if we have time in the next segment. We'll be right back here on the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blanks and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse Ross. Thanks for hanging out and keeping me company as we roll through another character creation for Vampire the Masquerade V5. This week we are taking some inspiration from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And we are going to create him as a Brujah. Some of the things that we have already decided include our disciplines, which we have presence and potence. We have a 3 in presence, which gives us awe, daunt, lingering kiss, dread gaze, and enchantment. All pretty powerful stuff, really. And in potence, we have level 1, so we took lethal body and soaring leap. Now, we also have our page numbers written down there. For the skills spread, we took jack of all trades because the Rock is pretty flexible in the things that he's involved in: acting, wrestling, sports, fitness. He's had his own clothing line, all that kind of stuff. So the guy is into a lot of different stuff. So I didn't think that it was fair to try to make him a specialist or anything like that. I think making him as diverse as possible is going to be a great character to have around your table when you sit down to play your Chronicle. So as a Brujah, we have some touchstones and convictions sorted out. They are always keep your sworn word. I thought that made sense for the Rock. Stand up for the disenfranchised also made sense for him. And for his touchstones, human related to someone he killed in his early unlife that he swore he didn't have to kill, but may have been killed accidentally. Maybe the beast got a little bit stronger of a hold on him than he expected. Anyway, so a human that's related to that person is someone that he kind of keeps an eye on. Now, we already have a few backgrounds, merits, and flaws that came to us through some of the decisions that we made earlier, including our disciplines and our predator type. So the things that we already have is fame at level 1, herd level 2, enemy at 1, and mythic flaw at 1. Now, we need to get a little bit more specific on that, I think. So fame 1, as an advantage, a select subculture knows who you are and admires you. That could simply be wrestling fans, or maybe even because I know that he was part of the CFL for a little while. He was drafted and then I think he was cut. Could be CFL fans from back in the day. But for now, we'll just put football. And herd at level 2, that's another advantage. Okay, herd level 2 gives us 4 to 7 vessels, half of whom share one residence that you pick when you buy this advantage. Example, aging devotees of the city's fading goth scene, fellow club scenesters, large family, whatever. So, let's say that, who would a Brujah rock? You know what? You know who they are? They're friggin' fitness folks. Gym rats. Yeah. Absolutely. That's awesome. I love that. Oh, I really love that decision. Oh, that makes me really happy. Okay, that's great. Now we need to look at the flaws that we had already had as part of this character. This may change when we get into this. These also may be in addition to, because I think the more complicated we make the Brujah, the more interesting the character is going to be to play. Because the Brujah, don't fall into the mistake of making your Brujah character basic. Make them complex, give them a lot of depth, layer them with merits and flaws and touchstones and convictions, and make them good people with dark secrets, all that kind of stuff. Make them onions, like Shrek. Okay. Enemy flaw. Oh, okay. Well, we've found Mythic Flaw first, so let's have a look at that. Mythic Flaw level 1 gives us Folkloric Bane. You take aggravated damage from a Folkloric Bane. Folkloric Banes include ultraviolet light, which is like sunlight, silver or silver-plated weapons. Damage is weapon damage. Simply touching a silver coin or silverware does 1 point of damage, or holy water. When faced with a block, you must... Okay, no. Ooh, that's interesting. Hang on. Every kindred bloodline carries particularities, curses, and soul scars. Fragments of ancestors long since dust germinate within the seed of the vitae that spreads the curse from sire to child. Other vampires develop weaknesses in the moment, psychosomatic disorders, or intensified by the embrace or invisible tides that eddies in the millennial flow of the blood. What I've just realized is that there are 2 different kinds of folkloric flaws. There's Folkloric Bane and Folkloric Block. And they are both 1 point. So you can take Folkloric Bane, which gives you ultraviolet light, silver, or holy water. You select one of them. When faced with a folkloric block, you must shrink away from it or spend a willpower point to push through it. Each folkloric block you take counts as a separate 1-point flaw. Folkloric blocks include holy symbols presented by any believer, crossing visible running water in certain cities such as Amsterdam, Stockholm, or Venice. Venice would be tricky, wouldn't it? Crossing the threshold into a home uninvited by the owner, a white animal, garlic, white roses, or spilled seeds you haven't counted. I'm going to give our rock-inspired character the white animal folkloric block. So, for example, if somebody that he is going to feed on, go back to the apartment, a little wink, wink, woohoo, but they have a white cat, not going to be able to deal with it, gonna have to leave. So, white animal is the Mythic Flaw. It's actually the folkloric block. Okay, so we have one enemy. They are a weak mortal, likely useless in a violent or potentially violent situation. Okay, cool. We can deal with that as the rock. Perhaps a tinfoil hat enthusiast. Wink, you know what I mean. Okay. Now we have to spend 7 points on our own, between our merits and flaws. And one, merit that I think is super important is having your haven. I think that that's a huge deal. You need to have your safe space, right? And because it's the rock, I think we're going to spend a lot on haven. Also, we already have 2 merits and 2 flaws. So we don't want the list to be huge. We do want a nice, complicated character, but let's not get out of hand here. So we want to look at our haven merit. Okay, a base haven. Well, I guess, okay, it says here you can take one as a flaw for no haven at all. So you must go through some effort, at least a basic test, to find a new resting place every single morning. That sounds awful. But it could be very Bruja of you. Maybe even thin blood. Anyway, very large, secure, or private, for example, a compound outside of town, a bank building, or a decommissioned subway station. A good size gives us security or privacy. Examples are single-family home or row house, a wolf enclosure at the zoo, or a branch of a sewer tunnel. This is the rock. Even though he's a Bruja, I think we're going to keep him quite rich, quite wealthy. I think that's going to be part of what makes him so powerful as a Bruja. We have some ideas here. I like this. A hidden armory. Each dot to this merit adds a stand of arms that your haven supplies. 1 pistol and 1 long firearm with ammunition. They are as secure from discovery as your resting place is. A cell. You have a dedicated locked place to store 2 prisoners, with a base difficulty to escape of 5. Each extra dot either allows you to store twice as many prisoners, up to a maximum of 32, only in very large havens, or adds +1 to the escape difficulty. This merit may not be available in small havens. That's fair. The Watchman. You have either private security or criminal thugs guarding your haven. Each dot of this merit supplies 4 average guards and 1 gifted boss. If guards would be conspicuous here, buy this merit cautiously. A laboratory. Your haven is equipped with a laboratory that is dedicated to industrial sink, gas, jet, reinforced floor, etc. Each dot of this merit adds 1 to the dice pool for a role related to science or technology. Okay, we're not going to do that. Your haven is a dedicated library? No. Your haven nestles in one of the most fashionable or otherwise exclusive areas of the city, in the rack. On a small island or otherwise a prime spot, add 2 dice to the foe's difficulty or bonuses to the relevant dice roll from either chase or from your base haven rating. If neither modifier precisely maps what you have in mind, work with your storyteller when you expect a 2 dice bonus to occur. For example, a haven close to an asylum might grant 2 dice bonus to etiquette tests in the asylum and on tests to pick up on court gossip. Luxury, high definition flat screens, designer furniture, objet d'art. It's me trying to be French. That was terrible. I apologize. Or otherwise expensive details give you a 2 dice bonus to social tests dealing with mortal guests in your haven. If you don't have at least 3 dots in resources, your decor was gained illegally. you know what? I think we are going to go with luxury, and we are going to go with 3. So we're going to put Haven, luxury, and 3 dots. Haven, luxury, 3 dots. And as always, we will write down the page number where we can find said information. And that is all on page 88, 188, and 189. 7 points on advantages, 2 points in flaws. Okay, so that's 3. So we can have 4 advantage on something. What are we going to pick? It's such a big deal. Oh, please. Okay. We're going to go influence. Okay. For influence, you have pull in mortal community, whether through wealth, prestige, political office, blackmail, or supernatural manipulation. Kindred with high influence can sway and, in rare cases, even control the politics and society of their city, especially the police and city bureaucracy. By default, influence applies most within one group or region of your city. Groups can be large, even diffuse, organized crime, media, religion, the police, city government, etc. Regions should be larger than neighborhoods, or all but the largest individual domains. Brooklyn, the River Gauche, the South Side. Your influence applies to the city as a whole at 1 dot. Less than it does with your whole group or region. Using local influence in another city or same area, state, or province may be possible in an additional 1 dot penalty, and so on. So the vampire might be powerful, a level 4 in Hollywood, a level 3 everywhere else in Los Angeles, merely influential at level 2 in San Diego or San Francisco, and just well-connected in Chicago or New York. The storyteller may require you to use influence in place of a trait in some of your dice pools, particularly social tests, attempting to sway minor bureaucrats or the equivalent in your group. This background helps you have an abandoned building demolished or preserved, or not start global wars. If a storyteller wants to run a game of global spanning masterminds, they may be recalibrated influence to apply nationally or even globally. So you could have 4 stars, which would be nationally or globally at 5. I think we're going to go with the Hollywood influence thing. I think that's pretty cool. So if we have 3 in Haven and we go 4 in influence, that's our 7 points there. And I think that that's going to make him a pretty powerful character. Now, obviously, if this isn't taking place in California or Los Angeles, you could take this character and you could spin it a different way depending on the locale of where your chronicle is taking place. So let's go influence 4, and we're going to put Hollywood because obviously it's The Rock. Could be argued national, could be argued global even with this particular character. And again, it depends on what you agree with when it comes to your storyteller and how your chronicle is going to pay out. Now we have to do 2 more dots in flaws. So we need to look at some more of those. And the flaws that you pick, you need to pick very carefully, but also pick them so they're a little bit challenging for you to role play at the table. What fun is it playing something that, isn't going to have any, sticky situations? That's no fun. I would like to give him the long bond flaw. So basically, if he feeds from someone, or someone feeds from him, he could be bound to them for a lot longer, than would be considered quote unquote normal, right? So we will go with the long bond flaw at 1. We may take our enemy and move that up to 2. Can I do that? Oh, no. I know what we're going to do. We're going to give him the stigmata flaw. Wait till I tell you about that, because I don't think we've talked about it. Okay. Here's how it works. It's crazy. I love it. Okay, so a stigmata flaw. You begin to bleed from open wounds on your hands, feet, and forehead when you reach hunger 4. And remember, he's only has hunger 6. This attracts attention, leaves traces, and may penalize some dice pools at the storyteller's direct discretion. Right? So much drama. So great. Okay, now, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. When we get back, we're going to try to sort out a sire. Find out who turned Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson into a vampire for Vampire the Masquerade V5. We'll be right back.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross, and we are continuing with our character builds for Vampire the Masquerade V5. Just hoping to give you a little bit of inspiration should you find yourself with an opportunity to sit down and play Vampire. You could take one of the characters that we've put together and use them at your table. Let me know how they play, by the way. Or you could just use bits and pieces of all of the characters and create your own. Just hopefully you're finding a little bit of some kind of inspiration. Now, this week it's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as a Bruja, and we are at the point where we need to make a decision about who the sire for The Rock is going to be. So this is where we're going to Google a little bit about Dwayne "The Rock." We need some Wikipedia up in here. Dwayne Johnson was born on May 2nd in 1972, also known by his ring name, The Rock. He is an American-Canadian actor, producer, businessman, retired professional wrestler, and football player. See, I told you that I was right when I made him, a jack of all trades. He was a professional wrestler for the World Wrestling Federation for 8 years prior to pursuing his acting career. His films have grossed over $3.5 billion in North America and over $10.5 billion worldwide, making him one of the highest-grossing box office stars of all time. Johnson was a college football player at the University of Miami, with whom he won a national championship in 1991. He initially aspired for a professional career in football and entered the 1995 NFL draft, but he went undrafted. As a result, he signed with the Calgary Stampeders of the Canadian Football League, but was cut from the team in the middle of his first season. Shortly after, he began training as a professional wrestler. In 1996, he secured a contract with the WWF and was promoted as the first third-generation wrestler in the company's history. He's the son of Rocky Johnson and the grandson of Peter Maivia. He rose to prominence after developing a charismatic persona of a boastful, trash-talking wrestler named The Rock. He subsequently won his first WWF Championship in 1998 and helped usher the WWF into the Attitude Era, a boom period of the company's business in the latter 1990s and early 2000s. In 2004, he left the WWE to pursue an acting career and went on a 7-year hiatus before returning in 2011 as a part-time performer until 2013 before wholly retiring in last year, 2019. So he's considered one of the greatest professional wrestlers and biggest draws of all time. I feel like either something happened between the NFL draft in 95 or something happened during his time as a wrestler, and that's when he may have been turned. So, between 1990 and 1995, it was football. 1996 to 1994 was wrestling. He made a return to wrestling in 2011 to 2019. And right now, he is an actor. Okay. So, he's 47 right now. Right. So, 47. He was born in 72. Are we going to have another character turned in the 90s? It seems to be a bit of a thing. Vampires were apparently very busy in the 1990s. But I think that because we know that he went through a very low period in his life when he was cut from the Calgary Stampeders in the CFL. He was probably kind of down and out when he wasn't drafted in 1995. So he was kind of in the middle of the first season, shortly after he began training as a professional wrestler. So I think maybe in this period of time would have been when he may have been influenced or may have been a little more susceptible to somebody who was coming into his life and promising him all of the best of things. So let's make this a... Who would have had access to him between football and training as a professional wrestler? Oof. I mean, do we make it the commissioner of the CFL? That would be kind of funny. Or somebody involved with the Calgary Stampeders. Fictionally, of course. But it has to happen before 96. Okay. So let's just pick the arbitrary year of 1993. So this would have been during his university time. Won the national championship in 91. Entered the NFL draft in 1995. Went undrafted in 95. Ooh, maybe that's not a good year to pick. Maybe we need to go with like 94. Or 96. That's when he secured the contract. So yeah, it needs to be the year where he went undrafted. So we are going to fill in on our character sheet his date of death as 1995. We don't have to have a specific month. I think the year, honestly, is a little bit more important here. His date of birth, 1972. So he would have been 23. So his apparent age will forever be 23, which is too bad because let's face it, The Rock has aged well. Okay. He looks fantastic at 47. Okay. So his apparent age is 23, but we are still looking at current times. 47 it is, right? Kind of has to be. Because he's not outside of a lifespan yet. Does that make sense? Am I overthinking this? I might be overthinking this. Yeah, let's just make it 47. So that means the other character builds that we did, their true age was probably off. His appearance, we're going to write down The Rock. Distinguishing features, bulging muscles. And a bull tattoo on arm. There. History, you know what? If you are going to use this character, you can just cut and paste from Wikipedia if you like, or you can fictionalize a little bit of his history, should you feel inspired to do it that way. Now, we still need to sort out who it was that did this. So it happened the year of the NFL draft where he went undrafted and as a result was signed with the Calgary Stampeders. So he lived in Canada for a little while, lived in Calgary. So was it a Canadian vampire? If that's the case. Okay. I like the name Benjamin. I think The Rock calls him Benny. And I think we only have a first name. I don't think that Benjamin has a second name. Benjamin. And I think that Benjamin is an ancient. I think he's super old. So I actually need to go to this for a second, to the book. Okay, so really this is something that you should really be figuring out with your storyteller and other players at your table. So embraced within the last 15 years. No, he's older than that. So between 1940 and a decade ago, that is accurate. So he's a neonate, 12th or 13th generation with a blood potency of 1. So blood potency 1. So he's going to be let's make him 12th generation because we can arbitrarily pick that. And blood potency 1. You know what? That makes tons of sense, actually, that it would only be blood potency 1. All right. Next, we need to find that little grid that I always forget the page of. Page 216. I'm going to tattoo that on my hand. Okay. So if we have a blood potency of 1, we get to superficial damage mended. Mend amount 1. Blood surge is 1 die. Or dice, however you want to say it. Discipline power bonus, none. Nada. Too young. Re-rouse roll check, level 1. Feeding penalty. No effect. Bane severity, 1. That is our Dwayne The Rock character build. You can take it, you can color in the lines, you can color outside of the lines, do whatever you want with it, have a blast with it. That is really the whole point of this thing. Okay, so we will run through a quick summary of our Dwayne Johnson character build for Vampire the Masquerade V5 when we return on the GSMC SciFi podcast, part of the GSMC podcast network. We'll be right back.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. And yes, we are doing another character build today for Vampire the Masquerade V5. This time we decided to go with a Brujah, and the character inspiration for our Brujah is Dwayne Johnson. Yes, The Rock. His archetype when in the Brujah clan is the monster in disguise, which I think fits. Super nice guy until he loses control. Speaking of the vampire, not the man, okay? His predator type is Osiris. His sire was somebody named Benjamin, a Canadian at that. And he was turned in 1995 when he went undrafted by the NFL but became part of the Calgary Stampeders. So that explains the Canadian, simply known as Benjamin. His attributes, so we decided to give him 4 in charisma. I thought that would be the most powerful skill for a character based on The Rock to have. We have strength, stamina, and intelligence all at 3 because, let's face it, he is strong. There is going to be stamina there because bro works out all the time. And he is wicked smart. He has a lot of different things going on. He has wits 2 and resolve 1. For his skills, we went with the jack of all trades skill spread for this one because The Rock has such a diverse portfolio. Actor, wrestler, football. He is working on a fashion apparel line. He's part of different charities. He's got a whole lot going on. And he's one of the highest grossing movie stars of our time. Like, it's crazy, the billions of dollars that this guy is worth. So I felt that having him as diverse as possible made the most sense if we were going to truly try to reflect The Rock as a vampire for Vampire the Masquerade. His highest skills is athletics. Again, playing on the football, the wrestling, the bodybuilding, all of that kind of stuff. We also gave him 2 in brawl, melee, performance, leadership, intimidation, streetwise, and awareness. I thought all of that made really solid sense for a character like Dwayne Johnson in the vampire world. And he got a whole bunch of skills at 1, including drive, firearm, larceny, stealth, persuasion, subterfuge, academics, finance, investigation, medicine, politics, and occult. Occult we got from, I believe it was our predator type. The Brujah disciplines that we went with was presence and potence. I didn't think that celerity, the way that the Brujahs use it, made a lot of sense for this character. So we also ended up gaining a point in presence because of another decision that we had made. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but we have presence level 3 for our Dwayne Johnson inspired vampire. So that gives us awe, daunt, lingering kiss, dread gaze, and enchantment. Pretty powerful stuff there. And potence, he's got lethal body and soaring leap, so he can leap over tall buildings in a single bound. I apologize. Sometimes I can't control myself. Touchstones and convictions, we gave him these. Always keep your sworn word. That seemed to make sense. Stand up for the disenfranchised also made sense, both as a Brujah and as the character based on Dwayne The Rock. His touchstone, this is something that keeps him close to his humanity. A human related to someone that he killed in his early life that he swears he never really had to. It kind of haunts him, keeps him awake at night. The way he makes amends with that is by looking out for the relative of this person. His clan Bane is basically what it is for Brujahs, just an unfettered rage that they have to really work on keeping controlled. His backgrounds, merits, and flaws. I think he's got the most of these of any character builds that we've done so far. So he has the fame and herd advantages. We gave him football fans at level 1 because The Rock is not really well known as a football player. So maybe fanatical football fans would recognize him solely from his period as a football player. For herd, he's allowed to have 4 to 7 vessels. And it's a subculture. So we picked the gym rats. It could be, people who are into HIIT workouts or CrossFit or whatever you want to call it. I thought that was kind of funny. It made me laugh. Enemy, he has a weak mortal who is useless in confrontation, who is a mortal enemy of his. I don't really know if you can call them mortal enemies, but for Mythic Flaw, we gave him the white animal folkloric block. So what that means is if he ever encounters a white animal, it stops him in his tracks and he can't go past it. So if he runs into a white wolf or a cat, even an albino rat would stop this guy in his tracks. For Haven, we gave him 3 points and we went full on luxury. It's The Rock, obviously. We gave him 4 points in influence. So, we also tied him to Hollywood, but if you're going to take a character like this and it's going to be set in, let's say, Chicago, you just need to find the affluent parts of Chicago and, apply that to the character build here. We just went Hollywood because it's The Rock and acting and all of that. As a flaw, we went with the blood bond for long bond. So he may feel a bond to someone for a lot longer than usual. When he feeds from someone, that can be a potential flaw. And the stigmata flaw, which I thought was an interesting twist that he would have to deal with. When his hunger falls to 4, he bleeds in, all of the stigmata areas, right? And that's very hard to hide in public and has potential for him to risk, the fall of the Masquerade there. Blood potency 1 because he is quite young. His true age is 47. His apparent age, though, is 23. He was turned in 1995. And, of course, Dwayne's date of birth is 1972. So he's truly 47 years old. Thought all of that made sense. His appearance, I just put The Rock. Distinguishing features, bulging muscles and a bull tattoo on his arm. That's what we have for our Dwayne The Rock Johnson character build. Hope you dig it. I hope you find a way to maybe play the character if you want. I hope that really what I'm trying to accomplish by doing these character builds is hoping to inspire you a little bit when it comes to creating your characters and maybe helping you think a little bit outside of the box and finding your inspiration through incredibly obvious places like actors and characters either in comic books or movies or what have you. So hope you're enjoying it. We'll be back next week with another character build. Until the next time, if you don't mind, drop us a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast. We would really appreciate it. And any kind of feedback is great, good or bad. Entirely up to you. Again, I don't profess myself to be a expert at Vampire the Masquerade. I'm currently playing a chronicle, my very first chronicle, with a Tremere. So I hope that you are enjoying the series of character builds. And if you are, let me know. If you're not, let me know. If you have an idea for a character build that you would like me to try, let me know about that too. I'm up for a challenge. Lay it on me, man. Of course, you can reach out on the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast Twitter and on Facebook as well. So we hope to chat with you soon. Leave those 5-star reviews. Leave those comments, good or bad. We want to know them because we want to be able to improve and make your listening experience even better. So until next time on the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse Ross on the GSMC Podcast Network. See you next week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.